Welcome to the Rethinking Humanity podcast, where we dive deeper into what makes us human and what causes us to thrive. I'm Lacey Delane.
Hi, I'm Sonya Larrea.
Hey guys, and we are so happy to be seeing you here. It's New Year's Eve.
Wow.
New Year's Eve, 2020, going into 2021. My gosh, guys, this year went by. I mean, it was painful, but it went by kind of fast if you think about it, looking back now.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe this is New Year's Eve, Lacey.
Insane.
Oh, my goodness. And we've been doing this 1 year, right?
Yeah, in April, we did our first episode, April the 6th. So, yeah, it'll be a year very soon. Isn't that crazy?
The time has flown by. Well, this has been a big year.
It has been. I mean, when you think about this year and you reflect on what's happened, not only like personally, but also nationally, what are some of the things that you think about, Sonya?
Wow. Well, you and I talked a little bit about this. I mean, I think of, I guess, a lot of loss, a lot of changes, but I also feel gratitude. I have to tell you, I think this whole culmination of, we know COVID and the things that people have gone through, also the uprisings, the protests. I think it has made us step back and say what's important to our society, to our culture. I mean, we were talking earlier, and I really do appreciate really simple things like just going to meet a friend for a cup of coffee or going to a restaurant. Because in 2019, right, we could just go do that.
Yeah.
Go to the gym, go here, go there, and 2020 changed.
Yeah, I mean, I actually was reflecting on that within the last 24 hours. I was like, man, I miss like going dancing and, how easy it was to just go meet someone new or go on a date with someone new or, do any kind of workout I wanted to do on ClassPass at any point in time at any gym. And I was like, wow, we don't even realize how good we had it. And now I'm like, I'm just so thankful to have the time to go work out and to have the opportunity to do that, and to go sit down and have a coffee. So I think in the ways that it's been challenging, at the same time, I think it's probably helped us to appreciate some things a little bit more and in a little different way than we had in the past.
Sure. And what's interesting is the conversation. So if I say I'm going to work out because I do a workout, they're like, well, how safe is it? And what are the sanitation procedures? I mean, that conversation would have never occurred pre-2020.
Yep.
So we are in a different world, and hopefully things will. I don't want to use the words get back to normal, progress.
Yeah.
And we'll be out and about more. But this has been a real challenging yet eye-opening year for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it has. I mean, the sentiment amongst myself and my friends has been, yay, 2020 is over. And I kind of feel that way too. I think we may be in a little fantasy place of thinking that things are just going to automatically be better in 2021. And I don't know that that's the case, but I do foresee some improvements. And I do like the idea of a fresh start. And I am ready for this year to be over because this year was a rough year for me. Definitely the roughest year I've had personally and then also nationally. And I'm sure there's so many people who would echo that exact same sentiment.
No. I hear you. I understand. And I think this was a year of loss. This was a year of also people digging deeper and finding things within themselves probably they didn't know they had.
Yes.
And I know you and I, even doing this podcast, I have to say, has been an incredible experience and something I don't know that we would have come to this place.
I doubt it. Yeah. Somebody said this to me a couple weeks ago, and I was like, wow, that is such a different way to look at it. And it helped me so much. I was saying how difficult this year has been for me. And the person said to me, well, I think that shows how strong you are that you were able to get through such a difficult time and a difficult year. And I was like, wow, I guess it does, doesn't it? Like, I mean, it's funny because the affirmative side of things, we have such a hard time imagining, sometimes
Sure.
for ourselves, but it's such a good point. And I think it's something that I would encourage all of us with is like, okay, yeah, this might have been a shitty year for most people, but guess what? We're here. And if we can get through that, that means that, we can get through a lot, probably pretty much anything. But anyway, it speaks to our strength, I guess is my point.
So the word I would use, Lacey, to define you and to many people out there is resilience. Absolute resilience. And that's what we need to hold dear to ourselves, that we have that and we keep moving forward.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we are on episode 13. It is New Year's Eve 2021, as we've mentioned. I want to shift into just telling you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, and then also give some shout outs. Today, we're going to share a article with you called The End of Productivity that Sonya found that we are just fascinated with. There's also some audio that we want to share with you from Dr. Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate, who we mentioned in the last episode. And then we found this really cool article that just had a lot of quotes from Erich Fromm that we want to share in this episode with you, and also preview for you the next episode, which will be the very last chapter of To Have or To Be, which is fascinating, and I'm excited for us to do that after the first of the year with you. So before we get into all that, I want to give a little shout out to the Fun Time program they had me on earlier this week. That will be coming out in the next couple of days. Give those guys a listen. They're really cool. There's so many interesting topics that they dive into in their podcast. And I really enjoyed going on their show. So check that out too. So you've heard them, haven't you?
Yeah, and I need to listen now that you told me you were on there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. It was an interesting episode. We also talked about how Victor tricked me into starting this podcast. So they loved that. They thought that was hilarious. So definitely listen for that. Thank you, Victor. You have changed our lives this year. So another shout out to you. Buy Victor a coffee, please.
Yes. He's our special person behind the scenes.
Yes. He's really to be thanked for all this. Buymeacoffee.com/Victor Ho. Buymeacoffee.com/Sonya Larrea. Buymeacoffee.com/Lacey Delane. That's how you can support us. We're trying at this point. Trying is the strong word. We're planning to not do ads. We'd like to not do ads. So send us some cash that way so we can keep coming up with great content for you guys. Yeah. And Sonya, we got coffees from somebody after this last episode.
Shout out to Cheryl and Steve. We know them through philosophy. They are awesome. And thank you so much, Cheryl and Steve. They are super special people. They listen to our podcast. They remember us. And we love you.
Yeah, we love you guys. Thank you. Cheryl read this book years ago, and she's just super loves Fromm and loves this. So thank you guys for all your support and encouragement. It means so much. Guys, also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram is at Rethinking Humanity. We're getting back on to posting regularly. That had took a back seat to this Senate runoff that's been happening. But we're back in the groove now. So don't forget about us. And then we're also on Twitter. It's at Rethinking without any vowels. So RTHNKG Humanity, at Rethinking Humanity on Twitter. So find us on those places. And I feel like I just did a lot of promoting. This is what I was like trying to avoid. But anyway, that's part of having a podcast, I guess. Right, Sonya?
Yeah. So we'll get into it now.
Yeah, let's get into it. Tell us about this this article.
I just came across it, and as probably our listeners know, Lacey and I think along the same lines of this whole idea of how society views work and the culture that we live in. And that's really one of the things that attracts us to Fromm, because he sees the benefits of living differently. And so one of the things I think we've highlighted in this, to have or to be, is how to be as opposed to have. And so this article just was incredible, which, Lacey, you can elaborate too. Yeah. Basically, off the top of my head, they talk a lot about productivity. And there's a lot of analysis in this time of the pandemic where people have not been working and they've had to rethink their lives. Like, what am I doing? Like, why do I work 80 hours a week? And is this really meaningful to me? And they're asking these existential questions. So, yeah, it piqued my interest. So, yeah, keep going, Lacey.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, I think what I love about this article is how real and how raw it is, and how it says these folks are saying things that I think people really are hesitant to say because they're so against the culture to say these things. And so I just want to commend them for saying them. And honestly, I've said this to Sonya. I kind of would love to have them on the show, like to interview them, because I think this is a fascinating experience that they had coming out of, this place of being obsessed with work and realizing through the pandemic and this lockdown, this isn't really that great, this whole being obsessed with work thing,
Yeah, I agree.
So just to give some background, the article, it's called, "Is This the End of Productivity?" It's a Vox article from May 22nd. So it's a little bit earlier this year. But here are just some kind of like highlights. And Sonya, if you want to pull any of them from here too, if you want, that's fine. One of the things that says in the article is that we really link success with being exhausted at work.
Yeah.
So the more exhausted you are at work, then that's the more successful you feel.
Right.
I mean, those of you listening, I mean, would you not agree that that's true? I think so. Has that been your experience too, Sonya?
Yeah, you know what? Absolutely. What really struck me about this article, because they obviously used various examples of people in the workforce, is these are people that are very, I guess, motivated, as both I'm sure I have been and you have been. We can all relate to that. And all of a sudden, because of COVID, they step back and they're like, what am I doing with my life? And how am I measuring myself? And we realize that in our culture, the measure of success is productivity.
Yes.
And if that's how you're measuring your self-worth, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And what happens when that productivity is no longer there? What happens when you no longer have a job? One of the quotes was, productivity is the currency by which we measure our own self-worth.
No.
And that's huge. The same token, I'd like to say, they talk about the productivity cult. I thought this was fascinating. This has been internalized by a generation of Americans, which I'll just shout out to Gabor Mate, detrimental to physical health and well-being.
Yeah.
So this is the norm. This is the norm of how we live. So we don't challenge this because it's what everybody does. And I really think that it's kind of shining a light on a taboo subject of who says, I mean, the idea is like, oh my gosh, I didn't sleep at night and I got all this stuff done. What does that mean? And this is what you and I have been talking about forever.
It's funny too, because I'll say how I'm thinking and relating to this right now this way. People have said to me, Lacey, what are you going to do? Like, you worked on a presidential campaign. Like, that's a big deal. Like, don't you want to run for office or something? And I'm like, or don't you want to strive to work in the White House one day? And I'm like, no, you know what I want to strive for? Having a fucking work-life balance. That's what I want to strive for. And it's like this shocking thing to people, because seriously, genuinely, a title with a busy fucking schedule, a stressful job is like this badge of honor. And to me, I'm like, no, I'm really happy just being a nanny and being at work and being present in the moment with kids and enjoying them and being good with them, and then coming home and doing whatever the fuck I want instead of having this productivity all the time mentality. I have to be working. I got to be on all the time, and just hung over from
Right.
constant work and not having a balanced life.
No, totally true. I think one of the other statements that I could relate to, it says, when you make your identity what you produce, that's a problem, right? And what I like that article is that fits right into Fromm. That cannot be our identity, and that's a crisis that we're going to have, because I think when you're overbooked and you're busy, you're not allowed to ask those existential questions. You're just on that treadmill.
Yeah.
And so this time of when you aren't working, or when you can't work, or when you lose your job, you have to say, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Just like
which is maybe why these folks have come to this conclusion. So I'm going to read another part, which I think is a nice transition here, or segue, or what have you. It's a connection. Like so many other Americans, she spent much of her adult life. This is the woman that is in the article. They're talking about in the article. So much of her adult life striving to fulfill an incessant demand for productivity in realms professional and private. She says hyper-competitive areas like the Bay Area where she lives reinforce a notion endemic to much of modern American society, that constant work and productivity equals a greater sense of purpose and meaning in life.
Love it. Oh my God.
And guess what? It doesn't.
It doesn't. No, and that's the lie that we've been told. And I think that's the depression that sets in, right? Because if you can do that checklist and say, I did this, I did this, I did this, or I accomplished this, or you have the title, and you're still feeling empty, then what do you do?
Right.
How do you fill that hole? I mean, I love that quote.
Yeah.
That highlights totally
what we're talking about. This also makes me think of what Fromm has said. Also, Gabor Mate echoes it. And I shared one of the links that I shared from the last episode, where he talks about being alienated from our work. And so we really are alienated from our work because it's not something that we're doing as something that genuinely starts because we want to do it, right? It's because, generally speaking, if we like it, that's different than genuinely wanting to do it, right? And so because of that, we have become so alienated from our work, and that's why that doesn't give us the satisfaction. That's why there's no sense of purpose and meaning in life.
No, absolutely. And I think this has been, that's what happens this year. That's what's happened this year, with people who have also been unable to work. They've sort of had to face that question, what am I doing? What meaning? The other part that came up in the article that I found really fascinating, you've discussed it, Lacey, is like, what are my hobbies? What do I like to do? Right. All these questions, that one should be asking. So I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, you can't self-actualize if, number one, you're working all the time, and number two, you don't know what your hobbies are. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't really know yourself is the point,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, this was really, really good. The last thing I liked that I wanted to say was overbooked and busy was glorified. People started asking existential questions, which is, I think, what happens, like you're saying, when you have more time. You start to actually think, instead of being on this constant, like, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to go here, I got to do that, the schedule that's just block with stuff. And then you're just too busy to even really think about, well, what am I doing and why am I doing it?
Right. And the overbooked is definitely glorified, because we've talked about that, where people come in and go, oh my gosh, I didn't sleep. Oh my gosh, I had all this work. And it's sort of putting themselves, I guess, above others on a pedestal. Look how much I did. Again, going back to have or to be,
Yeah.
We're back to that. Yeah.
We don't have to live like that. We just don't. And I am just set on not. And yeah, I'm just not. And I think the more people realize that and feel that way, the more we'll start to see our value shift as a society.
Absolutely.
So, cool. The next thing we have is a very exciting little clip that I want to play for you from Dr. Mate. It is a curveball that I'm throwing at you, Victor. I'm sorry. I actually did not give you a heads up on this, and my apologies. But I put the link to this YouTube interview in the little chat, Victor. This is an interview. It's actually one of his most recent interviews. It's from December the 11th, I believe. And it is with another woman. Let me see if I got this written down. Here it is. It's wow. I did not write down the time code here. Woo, this is not good. I did write it down, but I didn't write it down right here. Give me just
all good. We'll keep. We'll let you figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I will say that Lacey telling me about Gabor Mate, you have to listen to him. He's awesome. I've heard him on YouTube, and along the same lines of what we think, and I highly recommend his videos. It's and any books that he's written, because he definitely follows along our philosophy, along even with Fromm. Yeah. The concepts that he talks about are definitely what our mindset is. So
yes,
I encourage everyone to check him out.
So while Victor is kind of pulling this up in the background, like the magician that he is, the title of this YouTube video is called "Illness and Health in an Insane Culture," which is actually the name of his upcoming book, which I think just fits so perfectly with our podcast, of course. And the time code for this YouTube video that I'm about to give you, Victor, I've got to grab my journal, but is Dr. Mate talking about, he gives a metaphor for what culture is and how it's affecting us in a negative way. It's excellent. Again, this is from December the 11th, 2020. So it's one of his latest interviews, and I think it's really awesome. Let me grab this time code, and then we'll get this going. All right.
Cool.
Cool.
I think we talked about this also in our previous discussion about how our health and well-being is affected being overworked. So this is going to align right with some of the same discussions we've had on our previous podcasts.
Yeah, and for sure.
We live in a society, we already know that high stress means crazy work hours, or being, as Lacey said earlier, overworked, being glorified. And it's not worth it to be sick. There's the mental and the physical toll that it takes on us.
Yeah.
So I think what you're going to play is going to validate what we've talked about.
100%. So the time code here is 5:32, 5 minutes in and 5 minutes and 32 seconds in. And we'll stop at 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Victor, you are the best. And then we can start it back again to 7:15 after that point. So 5 minutes and 32 seconds in. This is Dr. Gabor Mate talking about culture and how it affects our individual well-being. Here we go.
And which is not a view that most people, what the heck is he talking about? But that they haven't looked at the evidence. And when it comes to culture, think of it this way, like think of the United States. Something like 50 or 60% of adults in the US are at least on one medication. Okay. Think of the word culture. In a laboratory, when you want to grow microorganisms or organisms, what do you put them in? Medium. What do you call the broth that you put them in?
Media.
You call it culture medium. And now, if you put these organisms in a culture medium, and 60% of them became diseased, what would you call that culture?
Yeah. What would you call that culture?
Yeah.
If those organisms, 60% of them were sick,
right,
you would call it toxic.
Well, he says 50 to 60% on medication.
Exactly.
What would you call that culture?
That's not like there's a couple of individual problems here. That's like there's a societal problem. Okay, so let's take that from 6:23 up to 7:15. Victor, you are the man. Thank you so much.
functioning of the whole system. Now, it's fascinating. Like, there was this plague of locusts in Africa last year. Do you know what a locust is? It's an ordinary grasshopper, a certain kind of grasshopper that under certain conditions morphs into this predaceous, voracious herd animal that devastates tens of thousands of acres a day, depending on how big the swarm is. When the conditions go back to normal, those same organisms, genetically the same organisms, go back to being grasshoppers.
Right.
Now, as human beings, we're more conscious, and you might say we're less at the effect of the environment, but we're far more at the effect of the environment than we like to imagine.
Oh, sure.
Well, whether it comes to neuroatypical conditions or mental illness, as we call it, that's an interesting conversation. Is there a mental illness as such, or a designation for something else, or physical illness, chronic physical illness? Like, even if you look at COVID, you might say, we're all in it together. No, we're not. If you're a person of color and you got a low-paying job and so on, and you're living in crowded housing and you're living under a lot of stress, no, it's true. Even the resident of the White House can get COVID if they're stupid enough not to take precautions.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody is actually totally immune. But
you can stop it right there, Victor. So I actually I love this, that he's bringing up how Black and brown people like obviously proportionally are negatively affected by COVID more so than others. That's definitely true. Where are we on this? We're at 9:17. Is that right? Can you go to 6:23? 6:23. Yeah, that works. 6:20, 6:19 even works.
Indeed. What would you call that culture?
Contaminated.
Contaminated, toxic, And we also grow up in a culture. Human beings are just as much at the effect of the environment that we live in as a culture, as organisms in a laboratory broth. And if you have this very wealthy country, at least a country where there's a lot of wealth,
good distinction.
and a country that wields so much power in the world, and 60% of its adult population is on medication, what are you going to call that culture? If you recognize that the individual organism really represents the functioning of the whole system. Now, it's fascinating. Like, there was this plague of locusts in Africa.
Okay, you could stop it.
Year.
Awesome. So yeah, he's saying that the individuals basically reflect the health of the society as a whole. Super interesting. I heard that and I was like, this is so good. This is such a good, obvious example of why culture truly does have an effect on our individual health.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, hopefully people will go back and hear the whole thing. I mean, I heard the part about the mental illness. It's really fascinating, in the toxic culture. I think we just look at that as sort of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Did I ever tell you, this is kind of a personal anecdote, but I'll bring it up. I went to the doctor one day, and the woman goes through, where they give you the checklist of like, you just could be doing a physical. She said, like, what medications are you on?
Yeah.
I'm not on any medications. You're not on any medications? She was stunned. No, they're used to putting in like, oh, you take this for blood pressure, or I don't know, whatever your cholesterol. But isn't that weird that that's our norm now?
It's a little bit scary.
It's all scary.
Yeah.
Because that is a toxic environment the norm is that we're supposed to be sick.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And heart disease is just so common. It's just so, I mean, I guess it's probably shocking to people when you're, when you're not on, blood.
What is really shocking, what I will, and you pipe in anytime, Lacey, what I love about Gabor Mate is he talks about stress and how that actually influences our, physical well-being. And I think for many years, I don't think people really associated the two, but we now know that stress affects, like you're saying, the heart, blood pressure, so many other illnesses. And that's the mind-body connection that we've
Yes. I'm laughing because later in that interview, they talk about how there's been some recent studies released about how when you're lonely, there's a certain part of your brain that lights up that makes you hungry. And I was like, well, no wonder I gained so much weight this year.
During the pandemic.
Because I was lonely and I was hungry, so I ate. Oh my God. I'm sure I'm not the only one too. So
yeah, no, you're not the only one.
No. Well, good stuff. Victor, I threw you curveballs. You're awesome. Thank you so much for being flexible. All right. So last thing we'll chat about today is this cool article that we found on it's a collection of Erich Fromm quotes. And there were so many in here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that just struck me so strongly. And I know Sonya too. So we wanted to take some space to share them with you and just discuss them. So that's what we're going to do now.
Do you want me to throw some out?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Let me see. There's so many.
Yes.
Okay. So the first one, I'm actually going to start with the last one that I wrote because I think it just speaks to the whole Fromm story that we're telling here. Yeah. If I am what I have, and if I lose what I have, who then am I?
Yeah.
I love it. It kind of fits into the article too that's saying, how are we, how do we view ourselves? What do we identify with? And if we're identifying with work, that's a problem. Or with what we have also.
Because if you can lose it and you're identifying yourself with it, if/when it gets lost.
Absolutely.
Then who are you then anymore? And that's a scary thing. And that's, I think, a reason why people have a hard time taking risks, making changes in their lives, that kind of thing, because they're defining themselves so much by what they have. And if they lose that, they're they don't know how to handle that.
True. And I'm going to throw this other one out because it just really, oh my gosh, I love this one. The only truly affluent are those who do not want more than they have. And I absolutely love that because I think of that being okay with what you have and not always striving to have more. And I think that's one of the problems in our culture because we know that doesn't, we've talked about that on the podcast, that doesn't bring you happiness.
Yeah.
So the only truly affluent are those that they're okay with what they have. That's a really powerful one.
Where I've seen that, and it's a place where many people I think would be surprised to say you can see happiness. But it's in Latin America, in third world countries where their people are poor, and they're just, it's because they are just. There's not something more that they're always striving for. It's they have what they have and they're thankful for it and that's it. And they share what they have because they know that equals joy, And so
yeah. What I love what you're saying about Lacey that kind of hits me is I would say people that would push back, I'd say in those countries, if you have food and a roof over your head and your family, they're happy, they're dancing, they're celebrating. And they're not thinking ooh, when I get that car next week or when I get that sweater I want to buy. And that consumer mentality that we have, it doesn't work.
No.
It takes you away from those moments. where,
Yeah.
like you said, you're sharing what you have and you're living in that moment. And that's all that we have. That's all that we have.
I had so many people too in my travels to Guatemala, and then after living there, say to me, "Oh, did it make you realize how good we have it here?" And I was like, "No." Actually, it did the opposite, you know? Like, it made me realize how good they have it. And they have a different understanding, a different outlook. Let's go there, a different culture. And that gives them more space and opportunity to be happy and enjoy their life. And so I think that we got a lot to learn from them. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's more of an enriching experience. You know, the fact if you have, I don't know, a fancier house, that's just something that that's a bill of goods we've been sold.
Yep.
That having that stuff, as someone would say, acquisition is going to make you happy, and we know that it doesn't work.
Yep.
It's not the way of life. So, which quotes struck you?
Yeah, so I was struggling on which one to start with, but I think I want to start with this one because I think it speaks to the whole of the philosophy behind what we're saying. And I think I'm the most passionate about it. So he says, man's main task in life is to give birth to himself, to become what he potentially is. The most important product of his own effort, the most important product of his effort is his own personality. I think a lot of people would find the second sentence pretty controversial, but when you understand what happens when the self is developed and well taken care of, I think you can understand that actually, I think, is a pretty accurate statement. But I love that Fromm had the vision to know what this is all really about is human beings to be able to self-actualize. And it's a process. And in the process of that, the relationships, the art, the love, the relationships that come out of that, that's what we're all really living for.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think you shared that with me. I know that this always comes back to the community because we do have in our culture this idea of the individual. And the reality is that an individual, that we're not going to move forward unless we collectively do that. And that's one of the reasons that I love Fromm, because he speaks to that over and over again in his writings.
Mm-hmm.
How important society is. I think there was one, I was trying to find it, which goes along with what you were saying, that I love. I might not have the whole thing, but all men are in need of help and depend on one another. It goes on. It really talks about human solidarity.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that.
Maybe we can find the total there. But I love that, especially for now with COVID and what we've gone through. I think the idea is that we have to come together. This isn't an individual fight. This is humanity coming together.
Yeah.
That's a different concept than what our culture has sort of taught us.
Yes. Here it is in its full. All men are in need of help and depend on one another. I mean, that right there busts up some societal norms just right there. Because nobody wants to say they need help and nobody wants to depend on anyone, especially in the U.S.
True.
Nobody's a strong word. Many people are convinced.
Many people are,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Human solidarity is the necessary condition for the unfolding of any one individual. I'm going to read that again.
I love that.
Human solidarity is the necessary condition for the unfolding of any one individual.
Oh no, I had to read that 3 times to go like, whoa, that's huge.
Well, it seems like it is deep, but it's also, I think, if you stop and think about it, it's kind of obvious. Like, look at this year. Many of us have been alone, especially single people who live alone, have been alone this year. And we haven't been like thriving and unfolding our full potential in solidarity, like locked in. You know what I'm saying? So it makes sense that I think we're so brainwashed to think like we have to be independent. We're the makers of our own destiny. We don't need help from anybody, and we better not need help from anybody. That like the solidarity is actually the key, you know, like there's just so much, there's only so much you can do on your own, and it's only so much you can learn on your own.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. No, it's so interesting that that's the next one that or the one that I picked after what you said. It's so good. The other one that I love, and you and I spoke about it actually, is this one. I'm going to say selfish persons are incapable of loving others, but then they are not capable of loving themselves either.
Ooh.
I absolutely love that because as we spoke, I think, I'm not saying it's easy, but I do believe sincerely and wholeheartedly that you have to learn to love yourself before you can be healthy enough to love someone else.
Yes. The quality of love you give to yourself is the quality of love that you will give to others. I believe that wholeheartedly. Will you read that again?
Yeah. Selfish persons are incapable of loving others, but they are not capable of loving themselves either.
So yeah, the root of all of the issues, basically what he's saying there, is that they can't love themselves, which tells you that if you can love yourself and you can love yourself well, you can love others well. But that's a huge dysfunction. Those folks need everybody to love them, but they don't love themselves.
No, I know. And it's something I think it's very much in our society, because I think we do have a narcissistic society. And so there's these things that we think are love and they're not love. And this idea, it's not a selfish thing. In fact, one has to love oneself before you're even in a position to give that love to anyone else.
Yes, 100%.
And unfortunately, in our culture's we're definitely not on the right track there. But anyway. Yeah.
Okay, I have a cool one.
Okay.
I love this. It's linked to love and quality of relationships. It says to love one person productively means to be related to his human core, to him as representing mankind. Okay, so listeners, I want you to think about these words that he's using, human core, and representing mankind. Think about this. Try to think it on a deeper level. To love one person productively means to be related to his human core, to him as representing mankind. Love for one individual, insofar as it is divorced from love for man, can refer only to the superficial and to the accidental. Of necessity, it remains shallow. So, what I feel like he's saying here is like, if you love someone, but you can't love humankind, all humanity too, there's a shallowness to your love.
It's a selfishness too.
Yeah.
That's an awesome one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, and I think Fromm's message too does come down to love. That is a really good one. I was going to say this other one that I had to think about it, but makes me think that this kind of is appropriate for our time is creativity requires the courage to let go of uncertainties. And that speaks to me because I like certainty and I like to know what's going to happen. So I love the fact that creativity requires the courage to let go. And even the letting go, that language, to let go of uncertainties. I think, we all, I shouldn't say we all, but most of us would like some degree of security and safety. You have to let go of that. For things to change, right? For things to blossom.
Yes. I think it reminds me of being like doing painting, which I've done very little of, but I'm trying. And if I'm trying to control what I'm painting, it just doesn't work. But if I let it develop, it works, and let it be what it is. And so I think that's similar to what he's saying, and maybe a way to kind of think about it in a different way.
Yeah, and when we think of being creative, I'm thinking of so many things, like whether it's, I know the traditional things are music or art or like you're saying, but even just thinking outside the box. If we want to know, we want to be safe, we want to be certain, we stay in this space that is very limiting.
Yeah.
But to be creative, you have to expand that.
Mm.
And then there's that kind of letting go of fear, which I think many of us, myself included, have. Let's stay in the safe space.
Yeah. Yeah. Risk taking is important.
Mm-hmm.
Important for that and for growth. Period. End of sentence.
Absolutely.
So he says, men are born equal, but they are also born different.
Oh, I like that one too.
Mm-hmm. I think, to me, this reminds me of how, in a false way, we say as a culture, like, everybody's the same. We are born equal. Men are equal. We're all human beings. We all deserve to be treated.
Different.
But we're different. And that does mean that we need different things and we want different things. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that's honoring that difference. And I'm sure we've all had experiences where you meet someone and you might look at that individual and think you know who they are, maybe how they're dressed or how their hair is or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to know them, and it's a completely different story. And so the idea is really embracing difference. Otherwise, what kind of world would we have?
Boring,
like which was another one he has, is robots do not rebel. We don't want to live in a robotic society. And that's really fascinating that he talks about that now with all the technological changes we've had. And one of our concerns is, automation.
Yeah.
So this idea of looking at our humanity it's now we have to be seriously taking a look at that.
Yeah. So the next one is a little bit long, but it is about society. And so I think I'm going to go here.
Okay.
Guys, stay with me and let's just see what we get from it. All right. So he says, the sick individual finds himself at home with all other similarly sick individuals. The whole culture is geared to this kind of pathology. The result is that the average individual does not experience the separateness and isolation the fully schizophrenic person feels. He feels at ease among those who suffer from the same deformation. In fact, it is the fully sane person who feels isolated in the insane society, and he may suffer so much from the incapacity to communicate that it is he who may become psychotic. In the context of this study, the crucial question is whether the hypothesis of a quasi-autistic or of a low-grade schizophrenic disturbance would help us to explain some of the violence spreading today. Again, that's deep. But what are your initial thoughts, Sonya?
No, I liked, what I got, my initial thought is because I have something similar, so I'm going to throw this out there.
Okay.
The millions of people share the same forms of mental pathology does not make these people sane. That one really, I was like, oh my God, that is so true. The idea is that if everyone around you is thinking, you know what, this is the way it is, and you're seeing something different, what do? That doesn't mean you know that they're sane and you're not. But I think the challenge of that, what's really, I guess, sobering hearing you say that is, how do you live in a world where everybody else is, thinking differently?
Right. I think the answer is, as we probably both know, it's hard. It's hard. Very hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, I have thought of that. So I find that really fascinating because we're kind of like a sheep going along. And then that one lone person is out there saying, whoa, you got it wrong here. But it's very challenging because then you're that individual.
Yeah.
Going back to the whole society, you're alone. So I think it takes courage to step out of that space. But I think it's something that should be looked at and discussed and critically analyzed, and not just say, hey, this guy, that the masses know. Because this is one of the things that Fromm talks about is the masses can be insane. I think that's a powerful statement.
Because it's what everybody is doing doesn't mean it's sane.
No.
Doesn't mean it. We could have a shared pathology, which is what he is saying. His studies have done. Yes. There's a shared
We have a shared pathology, workaholics.
Yes. And using people, manipulating people, brainwashing people, controlling people, getting people to do what we want them to do because of, at the bottom line, what is it about? The almighty dollar, right?
Right,
Make money
productivity.
off of them. Yes. It's disgusting. I really hate it. I really hate it. This is a good tie to this next one that I wanted to say. Love is an action, the practice of human power, which can be practiced only in freedom and never as a result of compulsion. So anyone who's loving you because they feel like they have to, or
Mhm.
compulsory, that's not love. Love is from a place of like giving and genuine, from freedom, from a free place.
No, and that's the message that we should. Yeah, it's love. It's absolutely that's his ultimate message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the last one, unless you have something else after this, there's only one meaning in life: the act of living itself.
No, I love it.
Yay, love this guy. Yay!
You know, we could talk about him forever. No, he's
Yes. So I'll put the link to this article where you guys can dig into these in the description, so you can enjoy it as well. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. Yeah, I think it's a great day. It's going to be. I'm hopeful for a really good 2021. We're excited for a lot more focused energy on the podcast for 2021. So that's really great. We're also excited about the next chapter. There's some really good shit in the next chapter. It's the last chapter of Have It To Be. So that's really cool. We just got a lot of good stuff coming up. So we're excited for you guys. Sonya, what are your parting words, my friend?
Well, I'm just so happy that people have tuned in, and I want to make a promise to everybody that we are going to be strong in 2021 with Rethinking Humanity. So be listening to us. Tell your friends about us.
Yes.
We'll hear your comments or thoughts, but we're here for you, and I wish everyone an incredible 2021.
Yes. Happy New Year. Cheers to 2021.